Good evening. I am going to call this October 9th meeting of the Woodburn Planning Commission to order. I am your Planning Commission Chair, Lisa Ellsworth. Can we get a roll call, please?
Sure can. Commissioner May.
Here.
Commissioner Bravo.
Here.
Commissioner Berlin.
Here.
Commissioner Bartell.
Here.
Vice Chair Hernandez Mejia.
Here.
Chair Ellsworth.
Here.
And I heard from Commissioner Lassen. He is, said he would try to call in, but he gave me an excused absence. Oh, that's not him. Sorry.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maybe not the next few years.
We'll try. Okay, we have the minutes before us from our last meeting on September 11th. Do we have any additions, corrections, or changes? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move would be approved the minutes as they are.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The next thing on our agenda is business from the audience. Is there anyone in the audience or online that wishes to address the commission on something that is not otherwise on the agenda later this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. Any communications from staff?
None.
Commission business. Today, we have one legislative item and one quasi-judicial item on the agenda. So the first one is legislative item LA 23-01. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. This is related to the Transportation System Plan and the Woodburn Development Ordinance, the WDO, amendment to address, hold on. This is an amendment to address recent development activities in the Southwest Industrial Reserve and address trip budgets in section 2.05.01 of the WDO. Staff has recommended that this item be continued until October 23rd, 2025 at 7 p.m. and that the record be left open until that time. Although the commission will not be hearing from staff on this item today, the floor is open to anyone who would like to discuss or testify on this issue. The record will be left open through October 23rd, 2025. Hearing so that anyone wanting to testify today may also choose to defer their testimony until that date when the full staff report and recommendations will be presented to the commission. So with that, I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing and leave the record open.
Madam Chair, do you want to just check and confirm that there's nobody in the audience or online who would like to testify on the issue before you entertain the motion?
Is there anyone in the audience or anyone online that would like to testify tonight regarding the legislative item LA 23-01? Hearing none in the room and seeing none online.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. Madam Chair, I move that the public hearing on LA 23-01 be continued until October 23rd, 2025 at 7 p.m. and that the record be left open through the reopening of the public hearing at that date and time.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So motion carries and we will continue this item until October 23rd, 2025 at 7 p.m.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a quasi-judicial item, PAR 25-02 and VAR 25-05. We have one quasi-judicial public hearing scheduled for this evening. The purpose of this hearing is to ensure that interested parties can offer relevant evidence to the commission in a timely and orderly manner. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, commissioners should maintain an open mind and not make any decisions until after the hearing is closed and all evidence presented at the hearing has been considered. That I will open up the public hearing on PAR 25-02 and variance 25-05. This is a proposed three-parcel partition of the Immanuel Lutheran Church property at 2036 and 1100 East Lincoln Street. Before we move on, are there any ex parte declarations? Any ex parte contact with the applicant or other individuals?
I want to say that my daughter is in Girl Scouts and that is their meeting location.
Okay.
I guess in that same vein, I was gonna wait for Cycles a little bit, but 20-ish years ago, that's where Boy Scouts was, Cub Scouts. And then I also attended the preschool there, that little lambs back in the day as well. So I just, yeah, I know it's been 20-something years, but it's, yeah.
Okay, well, any site visits? Since we're going there, any site visits?
I could not explain the layout
Right.
that way anymore, but
Any conflicts or biases that would preclude an impartial decision in this matter?
no.
Okay, does anyone wish to challenge any of the commissioners on their disclosures or omissions? Okay, seeing none, would you please read the hearing statement for us?
Of course. Both Oregon law and the Woodburn Development Ordinance govern evidentiary, quasi-judicial, and land use hearings and require that at the commencement of the hearing, a statement be read to all persons in attendance. The applicable substantive criteria for this land use decision are listed in the staff report and are as follows. WDO 2.02, 3.01 through 3.06, 3.08, 3.10, 4.01, 4.02, 5.02.05, and 5.03.12. The hearing will proceed in the following general order: staff report, applicant presentations, testimony in favor of the application, testimony in opposition to the application, rebuttal, closure of the record, deliberation, and decision. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria just stated or other criteria in a plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties the opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise a constitutional or other issue relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party wanting a continuance or to keep the record open must make that request while the record is open.
Thank you. We have a staff report.
We do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Kerr, Community Development Director. Dan Handel, this is his project. He worked on it all the way through and put together the staff report. He isn't here tonight, so I'm going to walk through the presentation and answer any questions you have. So as you described already, this is a type 3 land use hearing. We consolidate these packages because there's variances involved, which requires it to be a type 3. Otherwise, it'd just be a partition, wouldn't ordinarily come to the Planning Commission. We'll talk about those variances in more detail in a second. Just to be clear, the PC is tasked with verifying compliance with the applicable development standards. They're all outlined in the staff report. Consider discretionary requests, such as the variance, and issuing the final decision. Staff report and its attachments are officially entered into the record. Sounds like a lot of you are familiar with the site already. That's not, but we're 1036 and 1100 East Lincoln. So south side of Lincoln, just a little bit east of Washington Elementary. It's on the corner of Bryant. And again, it's outlined here in red. If you can see it, all right, it's showing 2 tax lots, but it's 1 parcel currently. This is the church building. Access and driveways are off Lincoln. And if you look over on the east side of the property, you see this is an existing home. It's a house that was converted into the daycare that's being utilized. And you'll notice, I just want to call your attention to a couple of things. There's a driveway here that takes access. into the house. And this is a garage essentially, which was added over the years. It's technically attached to the house, and that's going to be important. I'll explain why shortly, as opposed to being detached. There's sort of a covered breezeway that connects the two. The rest of the site is the parking lot on the other side of the church. There's no development proposed or improvements proposed as part of the church component to this, and that's going to be important. I'll speak to that in a second as well. So breaking it out, it's essentially, again, as you described, it's breaking it out into a partition into 3 separate parcels. Think of them as the larger church property. That's the parking property with the parking lot. That's lot 1. Kind of walk around clockwise. Lot 2, the new lot 2 that's being proposed is for that individual home in the garage parcel. And then a new lot on the south end on the back here. That's the new lot there's 2 new lots being created, but that's the one that will be created. And you can see it's this area to the south. I'll spend some more time on that in a second. For a new residential lot. Property zoned RS, it's a minimum 6,000 square foot lot, and that would be over 6,000 square feet. Parcels, in addition, there's some slight modifications to the church parking lot. You can see how this sort of juts out a little bit down here. That cuts a bit into the parking area. So as part of the proposal, I have to do some minor adjustments here to the parking area in the church. Those are really the only modifications they're putting on the church property. A few minor adjustments to this curb area up here, and they'll have to take out some parking on this side. Still meets all the required parking that you need for the church property, so it still meets the minimum requirements. Parcel 2 and 3 are going to utilize this one driveway that comes in, so you can really think of this like a new flag lot that's being created in the back. The residential component on this side. It'll be fed with a 20-foot easement, which will have to be paved. That's the code requirement. Developer 3 is going to have to do that. Again, this is lot 3 at the bottom, and there's a specific condition of approval for it. That's the gist of the partition, fairly cut and dry. We're going to talk about the variance requests as well in a second here. We've kind of zoomed in on the east side of the site because that's where most of them are proposed. So the applicant's requesting a modified rear setback for the existing house on 2. When you create this new lot back here, these new lot lines, you're essentially creating a new setback off this property. Technically, the front setback is off the street, and it's a 30-foot setback in that zone for that house. That's a 30-foot requirement because it's a 2-story building in the district. Now, again, what's unusual is right now, this is the driveway that comes in and the garage feeds from here into this side, off the west side of that building, leaving a 5-foot setback. Generally speaking, staff's comfortable with that modification in this case for that setback, because as I kind of pointed out, if this were actually detached, if that porch wasn't detached, or if they went in and did it tomorrow just to detach that garage, there would only be a 5-foot setback requirement anyway for a detached garage. The garage is 1-story garage. That and the fact that the way I usually look at variances, and you probably heard me say this before, I'm mostly interested in the impacts on the public, its impacts on the public right away and adjacent neighbors. And in this case, whoever would be purchasing this lot and whoever would ultimately be living in this lot would know about it, and they're on board with it now, as opposed to something that's going to adversely impact the neighbor around. The second request has to do with the street improvements. Because this is a partition and it's affecting this entire property, the code provisions are calling for the street improvements on both East Lincoln and Bryan Street. And those would include expansion of the right-of-way out here, minor improvement to make the lanes wider, bike lanes, storm, street tree, sidewalk, et cetera, along both Lincoln and on Bryan, lesser improvements, but they'd still be required to put in a landscape strip and sidewalk. The applicant's looking to not make any improvements at this time to either of those streets. Staff recommended approval, and we have a couple of conditions that chip back at some of that, and I'll explain what those are. Essentially, it's important, at least in staff's opinion, to pick up the right-of-ways now with this development, but not require the improvements. Again, I think what's a bit unique about this site and the proposal right now is they're not proposing any changes to the church site. It's really, we're thinking of this a lot like this is really just a flag lot partition on the east side of the property. So what staff's requiring is we still have the right-of-way requirements take place on both Lincoln and Bryan and the street side PUEs. And when this property comes in to develop, there will be a requirement to put the street improvements along here, which are the same improvements we'd require for any other new home in a partition. So staff sort of thinking of separating these as when the church site redevelops, they'll have to do all the improvements, such as all the street improvements, and we're going to talk about some burying the utility lines as well. But until then, staff's just going to apply the improvements that are necessary for a typical home right along this small stub of frontage. So that ultimately, 5 years from now, whenever the whole site's redeveloped, all the improvements will be completed. It just seems more conducive to put those requirements on the larger site for when they come in, as opposed to putting them on the entire property now, since the church is being redeveloped. But that's the variance request that came in. Let me skip ahead and I'll come back to that. The last request, a variance request, is similar to that one. It's for the overall requirement to bury or pay a fee in lieu for the overhead wires. As we said, when you look at the overall site, it's 330 feet of frontage along Lincoln and 240 feet along Bryan. The way our code's written is we have the requirement in our code says that if you have a lot of frontage, I think it's more than 250 feet, it kicks in this burial requirement or fee in lieu for overhead lines. And the idea is if it's a smaller development, it just becomes kind of cost prohibitive for that to work. In this case, that total fee would be about $165,000. This very similar to the last previous variance that I just spoke about. Staff's comfortable deferring that to when the entire church property gets redeveloped, whatever that would be, that they would do it in concert with that development and put those fees on those. I'm going to call your attention to some trees. This is a zoom in of the sort of the southeast corner where the playground is in the back right now of the property. There are 3 significant trees back there. There's no requests or plans to eliminate those now, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention, and it's called out in the staff report that under our most recent tree provisions, they're required to keep one of those trees. Of the significant trees out there, they'd have to choose those and kind of work it around their development when they come in, whatever kind of, assuming a single family home would get built there, possibly a duplex. Let me jump back for a second just to kind of bring your attention to some signage issues. There's a few signs out there. There's the pictures on the bottom that we have some conditions of approval calling out that whenever that right-of-way dedication takes place, what's going to happen is those are going to be in the right-of-way. What we do all the time is we have a requirement that those signs be removed when new development. Every time we get a new development that comes in, they often want to keep their existing pole sign, monument sign. And if it's stuck out in the right of way, it's required to be removed. In this case, we've talked with our Public Works Department and they were comfortable leaving those existing signs in place, provided they got an agreement for us. We have sort of a removal agreement that says if at any time the city wants to go in and take out those signs that are in the right of way, they'd have to sign off saying that it's okay. So that's a provision we'd be comfortable with. We talked with Public Works about it. In this case, frankly, these aren't enormous pole signs or monument signs. They're pretty kind of flimsy signs that are out there. Didn't seem too problematic for staff, so that's one of the conditions we have in here. It's a little bit different, but we're comfortable with, in this case, again, because there's no redevelopment proposed right now at the church. It's really only that small sliver of the east side of the site that's being redeveloped at this time. When the church property is redeveloped, they'll have to meet all the requirements we just talked about. Kind of quick summary. So staff's recommendations for approval with conditions for the right-of-way easements along both streets, removal of that signage unless they get an agreement to remove it. There are still requirements for sidewalk and the landscape strips or fees in lieu along parcel 2, which is where that existing home is today. Again, that's the same requirement we'd have for a single family home that got built there. And then, of course, the requirement that driveway become an actual access easement to the rear lot, creating a new flag lot. That's the 20-foot access easement that would have to be back. There's some minor improvements that have to make on the church property to make this work. I talked about losing a few parking spaces. They have to put in some curb and some wheel stops on their property as well. I can call them out. I can bring up an aerial again if you need it. And I know it's kind of minor, but we have a specific condition because there's evidently a very old storm pipe in there that's a public storm line that isn't in an easement. So that'll have to be identified and called out, put in an easement as part of that plat approval. Oops. But have the plan and the aerial. And I know we have some folks here, the applicants here to testify, and I can answer any questions you have at this time.
So does anyone have questions for staff?
This isn't like a big holdup for me or anything, but I am a little curious when we talk about the variance around the garage and the 5-foot setback. How often do we do a variance like that in these kind of, not obviously this situation is pretty unique, but I'm just saying, make those kind of exceptions.
Oh, well, so every variance would have to come to this body. So
Yeah.
I could sort of think about when they are. I can tell you when. Again, I always try, my impact is always when is the burden kind of felt on neighbors.
Right.
So typically when there's a new lot being created, if it's creating a new setback encroachment for the existing owner, it's less of a concern for me. If there's a new building being constructed and someone wants to build it either taller or with a larger or a shorter setback into a neighbor, and that neighbor's not here, staff's much more concerned about it and it's much more of a flag and a heads up. I think that neighbors and the public in general have an expectation that the code requirements are going to be met, right? And when they're living there, they expect that it's happened. Even if they get a notice, that's not always good enough. This one's sort of self-created on the people who are there. And again, I think what's unique about it is that legally, if that garage were separated, and they put a 6-foot separation in there and opened up that breezeway, they wouldn't even need the variance.
Cool. No,
That was staff's thinking.
Yep. That's on it. Thank you.
I have a question for you. So right now, what we're looking at is dividing this lot into 3 pieces. We're not looking at building a house right now. They would, if a house were to be built, the plans would have to go to the planning department. And then if there are variances, they would have to come to the planning commission. But if we agree to the conditions that the staff is recommending, if the church sells those 2 lots, whoever buys either of them will not be held responsible for any of the future costs of undergrounding or landscaping or any of those things. Because you keep saying, we would defer it to when the church property was.
That's correct. So when that will become sort of lot 1, right?
So lot 1
we
would
can
be
deal with
responsible for.
That's correct, right. The only requirements are to be on 3 and or 2, depending on how they work it out. Again, right now, this is all church property. So it's right now it's the churches. Sort of they can work that out with whatever sales agreement they like. The only improvement staff's calling for are the ones right here along the frontage in front of lot 2.
Okay,
And that's related to lot number 3 as well.
related to lot.
That's
2.
correct.
And then the driveway
That's right.
easement will go all the way down to the 3rd property or the bottom property, which way would a house be required to face? How
So-
would the house be required to sit on that piece?
So our code's open-ended enough for what we call, this would be a flag lot, right? Because it's taking access, doesn't have access directly on a right of way. It takes it from a public access easement. They can rotate that around any way they want. In fact, they can reduce their setbacks to 12 feet on all sides. That's typically what happens. In this case, I'm going to assume that they'd probably bring a driveway and the garage right here, right? Because it's not going any further. It's pretty rare that they run their driveway onto their lot and give up more land. They usually run it sort of right in, and that's their parking area, and then they can design the rest of it the way they want.
The rest.
That's more typical,
the
but there's more
setbacks are
room.
required to be.
That's right. And it kind of gets to one of the things you were talking about, sort of how will a house fit on there or whatever residence comes in. That's a pretty common square. You know, they're usually more rectangular, but it's not a very unusually shaped lot. And the reason it kind of sticks out a bit, I imagine I wasn't there when they initially put together, is because they need to meet the minimum lot requirements.
Okay. Any other questions for staff before I invite the applicant up? Okay, with that, I'd like to invite the applicant up. Please give us your name and address for the record.
Terry Berkey Gonzalez, and I'm 1560 East Lincoln Road, Woodburn, representing Immanuel Lutheran Church. Thank you, Chris, for all of the details, because I don't live in the planning world that you all do. So thank you for the details. We had Centerline, which is a underground and what's the right word for it? It's been a long day. Surveyor, thank you. Do that as well as an architect. So we spent upwards of $30,000 just putting this piece together. The one piece, well, two pieces I'll correct. One is that garage is actually attached, and it's not just a breezeway. It's actually completely attached to the house for what it's worth. Just full disclosure. The only other piece that our architect in Centerline, they never found the stormwater line that crosses through the backside of that property. It's collapsed, abandoned, who knows what. And it sounds like the city is asking us to try to find that. We're just wondering, is there any way that the city could help us try to find that historical? Because if Centerline is a surveyor that we spent a lot of money with, try to find it, you know, how can the city help us hire and locate that storm line?
And I know, I just happen to know a little bit just to kind of bring you up to speed. So the plans that we have on our civil plans at the city show a line. I'm just going to kind of highlight. It comes across here, and you can see one. I think there's a storm drain here.
There's a storm drain
right about
yeah,
here.
right back
So
there.
it runs this way, and then it shows it kind of breaking back into this lot and then heading south. But because I don't know when it was built, we don't have it exactly. This is something that was just done a long time ago. These locates aren't usually really complicated to find out once it's in the ground. They can kind of scope it. I mean, they can just do the locate from above the surface and find the lines underground. We can share where we have it. It's pretty detailed. It shows like where the bend is, where it comes down here, where it breaks again, it comes in south. It's probably within 5 feet or so, the plans that we have, which are pretty close.
Yeah. So anyway, that's, I think the help that we would need, just because Centerline had all of that documentation. So I don't think I have anything else to share.
Does anyone have questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This time, I'd like to ask if anyone in the audience would like to testify in favor of this proposal. Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify in opposition? Okay, since nobody wants to speak in opposition, no one is testifying as opposed, there's no need for a rebuttal. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And now we can deliberate.
Seems pretty simple, and if staff are comfortable with it, there's no development happening yet, so when all of that happens, be an easy slip in for all of the other requirements.
Commissioner Bartel, did you have anything to share?
No, I think it seems pretty straightforward. I agree with Commissioner Hernandez Mejia. I feel like it is very straightforward. And I don't have any opposition to it.
I will say that I am usually very much in favor of undergrounding utilities to the degree that we can, whenever we can, and the fee in lieu. However, at this point, it does not make sense to do the undergrounding or even the fee in lieu until, as staff says, the larger property is developed. But I did want to say on the record, I am very much in favor whenever we can to underground the utilities or collect those fees, but when it makes sense. And I don't think that it makes sense at this particular time. Okay. Well, if nobody has anything else, I would entertain a motion.
I motion.
No, no, no. I'm just waiting.
Motion to approve PAR 25-02 and variance 25-05 with the conditions recommended by staff in the staff report, and direct staff to prepare a final decision for the chair to sign.
Yep. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is there any other business from the commission? I want to say that I went and had my hair done. I will let you do that. That's exits after. But I want to say that I was getting my hair styled, and my hairstylist was asking me about things in Woodburn. What's going on over here? What's going on over here? When is the florist shop going to be built and things like that? And the woman she was working on said to me, "Well, why do you know these things?" And I said, well, I'm on the planning commission and I used to be on the city council. And the first time in all the time that I have been on these committees, someone from the public said to me, "Thank you. I really appreciate all you do for us." I just want to say that that is the first time anyone has ever said thank you. And it was heartfelt, so it felt really good. And I just want to share it with you all. Thank you so much. The public does appreciate what we do here. It is important. Having said that, I'm now going to turn over to staff. Any business from the staff? Any updates?
I was only going to bring up the issue that you all have been discussing about modifying your meeting times. We talked last time about it, and I think it was decided, and it was a really good idea. Let's put it on an agenda, just in case someone from the public or anywhere else has an opinion or 2 cents about it. That was a good idea, and you could feel free to have that discussion. I had my only comments are staff's indifferent if you want to modify that time. There's not a staffing issue in any way. And if you did, I think staff would prefer you not implement it right away, at least. Maybe kind of kick it off the new year or something like that, if that's all right. That's the only recommendation that we had.
And can you explain
Apologize, my notes.
the reason?
Missed that one.
I mean, I'm assuming there's a few reasons why not so quickly and funny.
Because we have, the short answer to that is we notice meetings sometimes into the future and we have them set up for a certain time at 7 o'clock. And I hate to violate and miss something even by a little bit. God forbid someone actually walk in at 7 and their item's over. They find out about it, or they have an assumption that it was going to be. That was all. That's the only thinking about it from staff's perspective.
Do you have a target date?
After January 1st, if you wanted to modify, I know you were all talking about 6:30, but again, it's entirely your decision. And I confirmed, let's say through the grapevine, that there weren't any legal issues or issues with the rules, or as far as I know, any council issues about it. I'll certainly let them know about it, but I didn't hear a red flag out there. They think about that. By the way, I think I mentioned they start early sometimes anyway. It's not like it's unusual. Heck, your chair's here all the time. 6:15 or something like that, or 6 o'clock for the early meetings anyway.
I would love a 6:30 start time. Yay.
We'd love to have you here in person too.
Right?
Exactly. Do we have to vote? I move that in January, we changed the starting time for the Land Use Planning Commission from 7 p.m. on alternating Thursdays to 6:30 p.m. on the same alternating Thursdays.
I'll second. Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I don't hear any. I would say motion carries. Have we heard from Commissioner
Lassen.
about that?
I don't recall if I asked him that question, to be honest.
I want to say he missed both conversations.
He did, but I've just forgotten. I may have actually mentioned it to him because I've spoken with him a few times since our last meeting, and I'll bring it up with him again.
I'm willing to accept the motion and the vote?
Yay.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
I didn't have anything else.
Okay, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
No more updates from staff?
I move
No,
we-
no, I do not have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
I'll get in there.
Aye.
Hi.
Motion carries.
Sharing the
We're
love.
adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Evan.